Hello everybody and welcome to the Whiskey Dictionary. Today I want to talk to you about A Tale of Tokyo. Now this is the experimental series that Glenmorangie has been doing for the last few years. In fact, this is the fourth offering in that series. But as a quick reminder, I really liked the first one, A Tale of Cake. It tasted like pineapple upside down cake. But then they went and did A Tale of Winter, which they finished this in Marsala wine casks, and I didn't really love this one, although I gotta say the artwork on the box is fantastic. It has like a texture to it, it's very cool. And then they had A Tale of Forest, which I think that they absolutely nailed the nose and the taste. It did taste like you were walking through a forest with like dead leaves falling and stuff. It's a very special smell that I know really well here living in the New England. So now when they had experimental series number 4, A Tale of Tokyo, I was all about this, especially hearing that it uses one of my favorite kind of wood, which is Mizunara. Now this, as far as my research goes, is the only time that Glenmorangie has really used Mizunara. And if you know otherwise, please put it down in the comments. I couldn't find anything else. But here's the thing with Mizunara. Mizunara is a kind of oak that only comes from Japan. And Japan likes to hold onto this oak because it takes about 200 years for the tree to grow high enough and big enough for them to harvest it. And it's all gnarled roots and it goes all over. Like, you don't get a whole lot of staves out of this thing. So when Dr. Bill Lumsden, who is the director of whiskey creation at Glenmorangie, when he wanted these barrels, he still had to wait years. And he didn't get them until 2016, where he took some new make, Glenmorangie new make, put that into the Mizunara barrels, and then let that age for about 5 years or so. At the same time, he took some 5-year-old Glenmorangie, put that into ex-bourbon barrels and ex-sherry barrels. At the end, he ended up marrying them all together, and that is what we ended up with here. Now, what makes Mizunara so special, other than that it's just from a really old tree? Well, really, it's all of the problems it presents. So Mizunara, being the kind of wood that it is, it's very porous. And so you could put your whiskey into this barrel, come back in a year, and it might be totally gone. Like leaked out of the barrel or evaporated. It is very porous. And that's a huge problem. That's also only one of the problems. One of the other problems is that the flavor it gives isn't really like the butterscotch, toffee, caramel that you get from American oak, or some of the other things that you get from like Hungarian or French oak. But in this case, you get like a shoe polish flavor. So why would anybody use this? Well, something about the way that the Mizunara interacts with the whiskey gives it a really good flavor if you can kill off that shoe polish flavor. Or at least round it out, because it's a unique flavor. It's something that you don't always get. And when you drink as much whiskey as I suspect that we do, unique is really what I'm looking for, at least. I don't know about you. But in this case, Mizunara, I was excited. Everything about this is a bold choice, especially when you consider that regular Glenmorangie probably would have taken to regular Mizunara just that extremely well. But instead, he adds in also sherry and American oak to kind of round everything out. I'm expecting that the sherry would overtake the Mizunara and then everything would be a little duller because of the American oak. But it's not quite what happens. We'll talk about that in a sec. Now, one more thing to talk about. This box, just like all the boxes that they do for these Tale series, are very, very cool. And this is by an artist named Yamaguchi Akira, and it's a scene of a Tokyo street. Now, one of the cool things is that they put Dr. Bill in this box, like in the painting, 5 times, a la Where's Waldo. So it's kind of fun to look and see if you can find them. There's other things here like a rack of barrels and even tasting notes. So it's something to look at if you end up getting the box. As for the metrics, this was released in late 2023. It's 46% ABV or 92 proof. It's 100% malted barley. It does not have an age statement. As I mentioned, it's married, so finished separately, but then married together in Mizunara, American oak, and Oloroso sherry. Then it's non-chill filtered and non-colored, at least I suspect so. None of them have been. So it's a safe assumption, and Glenmorangie really doesn't do that with their stuff anyway. But the price point here is $110. I think I paid $130 for mine. It was expensive. And part of that is because of that Mizunara. All the other Tale series have been about $100 to $110. This one's slightly more pricey, so something to consider. On to the nose. This smells a lot like regular Glenmorangie 10, except with some very unique notes to it. And what those are, in this case, it's like a herbal kind of smell. There's a couple parts of it here. So I want to say mint, but not quite that strong. I want to say clove, but not quite that strong. And I want to say grass, but not quite that earthy. So Does that make sense? Probably not. That probably makes no sense because it doesn't make sense to me now, but that's what I'm getting. You smell some toffee in there for sure. That's obviously coming from the American. What you also get is a bit of an oak smell, but it's not like what you'd get on a bourbon where typically you can smell that and be like, oh, this is going to be an oaky bourbon. Like think of something like Knob Creek. This has nothing to do with that. It's a way softer oak smell. Almost, I realize cedar is not oak, but think of the difference between smelling oak and cedar. It's similar to that, even though it's the same species. Well, same phylum? I don't know. Oak. It's not the same species. But in this case, it's softer and it's easier, and something about it just smells different. So keep that in mind. It's a very familiar smell, though. I've had several Irish whiskeys that are aged in Mizunara, and it's the same smell. So aside from that, you're getting orange for sure, but it's more of like a... This sounds super pretentious, and I'm sorry to even go here, but it does make sense. Like, it's not a regular orange, it's more like a mandarin orange, and I'm not sure how to describe the difference. I've had them both recently, so like I'm fairly confident in that, but whatever. That's one of these tasting notes from a random YouTuber that's you look and you're just like, what a dork. But whatever, it's mandarin orange. Also, if this is the first time you're thinking I'm a dork, then you clearly haven't been watching for a while. All right, aside from that, cherries shows up. And there's a little bit of a nutty note on the nose as well. All right, let's go ahead and have a taste. Cheers. That's delicious. Which is great, because when I did my first taste of this, which I put out to my patrons, my initial thoughts on this were not as great as I suspect that they're going to be today. And part of that, it was starting to follow that trend of I loved the first one, didn't like the second one, loved the third one. I was hoping I would like the fourth one. And I think I'm going to end up in the middle here, but we'll talk about the taste in a sec. So as far as taste goes, white pepper is kind of a big one. And that's right at the forefront, which is strange. Usually that's like a finish for me, is tasting any sort of pepper. Orange comes across here, and I'm just going to stick with the mandarin orange and whatever. So cherries, oak. Let me go into detail about this Mizunara oak here. More so, actually, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm realizing the taste of the sherry, other than being represented by the cherry and maybe a little bit of the orange, it's mostly disappearing. And that's strange because sherry typically overpowers, which means that this is very well balanced. The fact that I can taste the Mizunara oak, I can taste the sherry, and then there's a little bit of like a caramel on the finish. The American's mostly getting lost, but I think the American is there to round out the whole thing, and I think it's doing its job. This tastes like a subtle sherry that highlights the Mizunara, and I think that's really cool. It's not something I tasted in my first taste. It's something that I clearly there's not a ton gone from this, but I did let this sit open for a little while, and it makes a big difference. Okay, so I enjoy the flavor here. I think it's great. I don't think it's an outstanding expression in the Tales series so far. I think it would probably be my third favorite. I'd put it above the Winter still. The cake was my favorite by far, then the Forest, and then this one, and then I'd say the Tale of Winter would be in the last. However, is this something that you should buy? For $110, here's how I would answer that question. If you have not had Mizunara before, or if you've only had it in Irish whiskeys where they really pretty much just make a very, not generic, a very simple whiskey and then highlight just the finish, this isn't doing that. This is expertly crafted. This is exactly what Bill wanted to present, and I think it's just not my thing. So that's more on me than on him. And I could tell that this is well made. So for $110, here's what you're gonna get. And like I said, it cost me $130. It is an expensive barrel, and it cost more money to produce this. So the price should be a little bit higher. And all of these Tales series being just slightly above $100 feels okay to me. I don't love it, but I'm okay. Like, I don't think that this should be $80 or anything like that. So I think 100 is about a right price point. If you can get this for 110, I would say buy it. I don't think you should spend more than that. I think you could wait for it to maybe go on sale or something like that. But overall, I would say this is definitely a try it, if not a buy it. But that does it for this episode of the Whiskey Dictionary. However, there are two things I want to tell you about, and they are both at my store, whiskeydickpicks.com. Yes, you heard that right. I have a single barrel release of Barrel. This one is called the Apricot Affair. It's absolutely delicious, finished with Armagnac. And then I also have a brand new rye. This one just showed up in the store this week. This is from Stellum. This is very, very, very good. And if you like rye or if you don't like rye, it's kind of like a bourbon drinker's rye. But if you enjoy rye, there's some complexity in there that I also think you'll enjoy. It's not going to be the kind that just blows away your palate with heavy herbs and grass. It's just good. So, I mean, obviously I picked it. I love it. So anyway, I hope you guys check those out. Check out the store. Other than that, I think you should get this one. I think I'm rethinking it a little bit. I think encourage these tale series because the experimental ones are too few and far between. Think of like Glenfiddich, right? They haven't done a new experimental one in a long time, and I think it's because they weren't selling very well. Keep these coming. I do know that there's the 5th one is already in production, and I'm very excited to see what it is. All right, have a great rest of your week, everybody, and cheers.